You're watching 38IZ Videos, Phoenix, Arizona. This is Val Tapia. Our guest musician today is one who actually was here a year ago with us, and it's very cool, and we're very honored to have him a second time. Last year, he was the second half of Daryl Hall and John Oates. Now, John Oates himself is coming for a solo show on Wednesday, September 26th at the Mesa Arts Center. Very cool facility if you've never been there. And he's bringing the Good Road Band with him. And so without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started via Skype, only on 38IZ Videos, Mr. John Oates. John, how are you doing?
Good morning, Val, or good afternoon, as I might say.
Yeah. Hey, let's get started. Let's get started with the new album, Arkansas. You've been touring this. You started touring earlier this year, and you'll be coming here to Mesa later this month. Give us, what was the seed that planted the record, if you could let us know briefly, and it's a very cool record, so congratulations on that. Give us a little bit of a background on it, and go from there.
Well, there's quite a long story involved. I'll try to make it short. I wrote a memoir called Change of Season, which I went back into the memory banks and went back and revisited my early childhood, the things that made me want to become a musician, which had a lot to do with American traditional music, blues, folk, ragtime, stuff like that, before I met Daryl Hall and before we began working together. So the book was kind of the inspiration for it. And then one of my childhood heroes was a guy named Mississippi John Hurt, who was a blues musician. And I knew all his songs. I got to meet him back in the 60s when he was rediscovered during the folk revival in the early 60s. And I wanted to go in the recording studio and do a homage, kind of a tribute to him. And I started out by doing that. However, the album idea expanded, and it became a kind of a snapshot of early American popular music from the late 1920s and 1930s. And I realized how important it was to America to have the birth of radio, the birth of the phonograph machine, all happening at the same time. And this was the first time people could hear music at home in their house. And I thought that was a really unique time, and I wanted to somehow celebrate that.
And to that point, do you think that and also Mississippi John Hurt, one of your idols back then, and this music you were obviously you grew up with. This was well before you and Daryl Hall crossed paths. I mean, this music was very important to you as a child.
Oh, yeah. I was kind of a folk musician, a folk blues musician. And that's what I brought to the table when I met Daryl Hall. That was the thing that kind of, that I said, hey, this is kind of, this is what I do. And he had a gospel piano thing and an R&B street corner doo-wop thing that he was doing. Eventually, those two styles blended together and melded and became really what Daryl and I ended up doing, what people, of course, have come to know of our pop music. But nevertheless, my real deep roots and musical DNA is with this blues and old-timey music.
So how much of the new album will be performed live on this tour?
Well, I actually play most of the album. I have this incredible band from Nashville, the same band called the Good Road Band, and these are some of the greatest musicians I've ever played with. I'm bringing them along with me, and they're the guys who played on the record, and they're just, if you love music and you love good playing, this is what it's all about. It's real. It's as authentic as it gets. I love playing smaller venues where you can really see people and really interact with people. I tell a lot of stories, and of course, I play some Hall & Oates songs. I play some of the tunes from the big hits, but I do them in different ways, kind of take them back to their original idea. For instance, a song like Maneater, when I first got the idea for that, I wrote it as a reggae song. So with my band, I get to play it as a reggae song. So it kind of spices things up and gives people a new perspective on who I am as a musician, and definitely introduces them hopefully to some of this great American early pop music.
What are some of the if you could do this, why don't you go ahead and introduce the band members if you could, and give our viewers a little intro on who's in your band.
Okay, well, we've got, as I said, most of them are studio musicians from Nashville, my good friends. It starts with a guy named Guthrie Trapp, who is a amazing electric guitar player from Alabama. And he's played with everyone, from Jerry Douglas and, I don't even know where to begin. If I start giving all their credits, we'll be here all night. Steve Mackey's on bass, plays with the Wallflowers. Russ Paul is playing pedal steel. He plays with Dan Auerbach. Josh Day plays drums. He plays with Sugarland and Brandy Clark. So, the list just goes on and on and on. These are some of the greatest players, and we have a lot of fun together. We got a great chemistry, and it's all about real music in real time in a venue that you can really appreciate that kind of stuff in.
Do you think, talking about the significance of Mississippi John Hurt, do you think he's received the recognition he deserves for his contributions to blues music?
Well, maybe not to the general public, because they don't, they know the names like Robert Johnson and Muddy Waters and things like that, Howlin' Wolf. But Mississippi John Hurt, among the true blues lovers and people who are really in the know on blues, really appreciate him because he was very, very unique. He didn't play Delta blues the way most people think about Delta blues. He was a little bit more of a what they call a hilltop or Piedmont blues player. He did come from Mississippi, and he recorded from 1926 until 1929, and then he worked on a cattle farm for until the 60s, where he was rediscovered during the folk revival and brought up to some of the folk festivals and things. So always been one of my favorites. I know all his songs, and it's just something about him is very special.
But many have credited him for the revival, if you will, of American folk in the 60s during your era.
Absolutely. I got to see him at the Philadelphia Folk Festival. He performed at Newport Folk Festival, which is obviously one of the preeminent folk festivals in America. In 1963 and 1964, he was basically reintroduced to a modern young audience, predominantly a college audience. And he captivated everyone with his style, unique style, and his grace and his gentleness. And believe it or not, I actually own his guitar, the one that he played at Newport Folk Festival in 1964.
Wow. How do I follow that one? Do you think? What's that?
I said I don't know how you follow it.
Yeah.
I can show it. I can show it to you if you want.
How do you think? Well, the title of the album, Arkansas. Do you think Arkansas has received the reverence that maybe New Orleans or even West Memphis blues music has, and the significance of Arkansas music to you, the blues scene?
That's a very good question. No, I think to the general public, Arkansas is not as well known as a music hub as the Delta, Mississippi Delta, and New Orleans, as you mentioned. But Arkansas is very important. Johnny Cash came from Arkansas. Jerry Lee Lewis came from Arkansas. So a lot of great musicians came from Arkansas. And really, what captivated me about Arkansas and its musical heritage was the fact that it's kind of the last rural stop along the Mississippi River, as the Mississippi River brought this great music northward, from the deep south. And of course, after, that's Memphis, and then from there it's St. Louis, and from there it's Chicago. And that's really the birth of rock and roll. And that's how rock and roll kind of developed. So the music that I'm playing now is, I guess you could call it the music that really preceded rock and roll.
Right. And it does combine, it's folk and blues combined, really, on this new album.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. There's, as I said, there's ragtime, there's swing, there's blues, there's a little bit of a kind of a Memphis Sun Records rockabilly thing happening. But to me, it's all one thing, and it all emanates from this great American musical tradition that came up from the Deep South.
Yeah. So what other blues artists have you seen throughout the years? Could you give us a little a taste of who you've seen throughout the years?
Well, I mean, let's go back in time to the early 60s, mid 60s. I was in Philadelphia as a kid, and getting to watch some of these great performers as they were being rediscovered. I saw Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee, Son House, Robert Pete Williams. And then, in terms of the folk artists, Doc Watson and Merle Watson, people like that, Bill Monroe, in terms of bluegrass. But at the same time, what was really cool about being in Philadelphia at that moment was to go to the Uptown Theater in North Philadelphia and hear some of the greatest R&B acts of all time. I saw Otis Redding, Sam and Dave, The Temptations, Smokey Robinson, and the list goes on and on. So just being in Philadelphia at that time in the 60s, really, that provided me this incredible, not only inspiration, but really a chance to experience some of the most classic and most influential American music that's ever been made.
I noticed that I read in recent interviews that you really were working to release this record on LP, literally LP, and it was recorded on analog equipment. Is that correct?
Yeah, we recorded as on analog equipment. Considering the type of music we were making, the fact that it was played live and it was very real and old timey, I wanted to capture it in the most authentic way possible. Recorded it in a studio that my co-producer and engineer has a collection of vintage equipment. We used all vintage microphones. We really wanted to capture as best we could the spirit of that music. And that's really what we did. And we engineered it and produced it to be heard on vinyl. So if you're a vinyl lover out there and you get this record on vinyl, it really sounds right. Yeah, there's a little bit of a, without getting too technical, there's certainly ways of dealing with the recording specifically for vinyl. And that's what we did.
And also the songs on here, most blues songs, as most blues historians know, they're relatively short. For the most part, and it really gives credence to the old adage that less can be more, and more isn't always better.
I love that you said that. Yeah, some of these songs are short, and this was before the day of long involved guitar solos and things like that. Of course, we have a lot of that great playing on the album, but you have to remember back in the days of the early records, early phonograph machines, they could only play a certain amount of time. Right. The needle and the grooves were not really highly developed, and anything longer than 3.5 minutes, you basically couldn't play on a record. So a lot of these songs, of course, the songwriters of the day, they wrote their songs specifically to be heard that way and to be, played on a record.
We're speaking with none other than legendary John Oates. John Oates with the Good Road Band will be coming to town on Wednesday, September 26th at the Mesa Arts Center. Tickets are available at mesaartscenter.com and the Mesa Arts Center box office. And I highly recommend you go see a show at this place because it's a gorgeous facility. John, I'm not sure if you played there or not, but you're in for a real treat if you see it.
I can't wait. I love these type of venues where it's specifically designed for music and the people are close. And, there's going to be some great stories. And I like to put the songs into context so people understand a little bit more about this amazing American music tradition. And I guarantee you there's going to be some real hot playing. So if you want to hear a great band, I promise you these guys will deliver.
What are some of your favorites on the record? And give us a little, if you could, brief stories behind some of the songs.
Well, there's a couple of originals. I wrote the song Arkansas, which, of course, I titled the album after. That was done after an inspiration that I visited a small town in Arkansas along the banks of the Mississippi River. It was a cotton plantation. Highway 61, the Blues Highway, runs directly through the middle of the town. And for me, it really crystallized this great American blues tradition. So I wrote that song. But there's a song called Anytime by Emmett Miller, which I discovered was one of the first million-selling records of all time from the early 1920s. It was the first record to actually sell 1 million copies, which I thought was really significant. And a lot of people don't know about stuff like this. And I thought it would be nice to bring this back out and let people rediscover where pop music really started.
So when the blues moved north, if you will, for lack of a better way to put it, were you still into the blues and that, or do you really like blues from the South, for lack of a better way to put it?
Well, even, growing up in the Northeast, I grew up in New York and Philadelphia. I was definitely, my deepest musical influences are for the music of the American South, whether it be bluegrass, Appalachian, blues, whatever it might be, New Orleans funk. That was just the music that moved me. I always gravitated to it. Now I live in Nashville. I get a chance to be part of that Southern culture and play with great Southern musicians who really have a deep understanding of this stuff. But no, I love all kinds of music. I was into early rock and roll, obviously, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Elvis, all that stuff, and so on and so forth. To me, it's all really part of a continuum. It's all part of this, as I say, and I keep repeating myself, but it's the great American popular music tradition.
Yep. So I want to go back a little bit. We're going to talk about two very significant events that you were involved with, and this is like from 1985, both from 1985. Hall & Oates are at this peak. Daryl Hall and John Oates are at their peak right now, and you get to be part of two very significant events. The first one being USA for Africa. Can you give us a little bit of your recollections on that, and how you became involved with that?
Well, USA for Africa culminated with the Live Aid concert, the very first Live Aid concert, which was done in London, and then later that same day done in Philadelphia. Of course, being from Philadelphia, known as a Philadelphia group, Daryl and I got a chance to headline that show in this giant football stadium, and we brought along Eddie Kendrick and David Ruffin, who were the original lead singers of the Temptations, one of our most favorite groups. And we brought them along to kind of sing some of the classic Temptations hits. And then we backed Mick Jagger and Tina Turner when they came out and did a solo set. So it was really an amazing experience to be able to headline such, and it's actually, historically kind of important because it was the first time a rock concert had been globally televised around the world. I mean, nowadays, of course, that's not a big deal with the internet, but in those days, it was a very big deal to have a concert be seen by the entire world.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I like it. It was kind of like the Live Aid for Gen X in some way. I mean, the Live Aid, it was basically the Woodstock, I should say, for Gen X.
Yeah, it was a very important moment for music, and I was really, obviously, very proud to be part of it.
So to go a little bit, what are you going to be doing the rest of 2018? Would you say what's on the agenda for John Oates?
Well, I'm going to be playing with my Good Road band, and we're going to be doing this tour, obviously, coming to places like Mesa and on and so forth, and then going to the UK. The album has been received really well there. We're playing in Dublin, Manchester, and London, and then perhaps some other dates in Europe as well. So it's an exciting time. I really want to see this album through, give people a chance to really hear it because I'm really proud of it. And I think it's some of my best work without a doubt. And it's a very important record musically for me. So I want to play it for as much as I can.
Will we be hearing some music from your other solo records? Because some people don't know you have several earlier solo records that they'd like to hear songs from.
Yeah, well, thank you. I've got six solo albums, believe it or not. And I play a few tracks from some of my earlier solo stuff, but I also play some Hall & Oates stuff. For instance, I wrote Maneater. The original chorus of Maneater was written as a reggae song. And of course, it didn't turn out that way on the recording that people know over the years. But when I play my solo shows, I'll take it back to that reggae feel and give people a chance and a little insight and say, hey, this is what this song sounded like when I first came up with the idea. So stuff like that, I'll do She's Gone and maybe some good Hall & Oates surprises for the people who might get a little confused about what I'm doing.
And also, to ask you a question, just strictly from being in the music business as long as you have, do you think that veteran artists, how do I word this? Do veteran artists really, are they able to continue? How are they able to continue in the social media world? Have they grasped a lot of it? Is it more challenging for them, or is it a help? Considering the way the music business is today, what's left of the music business, some would argue.
That's right. What's left of the music business? You're exactly right. I think it's up to the individual. I'm not that technologically, savvy. I barely got this Skype interview together, so thank you for helping me with that. But you know what? It's just here again. You have to roll with the punches. The world has changed. The digital world, the virtual world we live in, has its own unique set of rules, and you learn how to operate within it, or you don't, one or the other. So I think I have a fairly good grasp of the social media stuff. I don't get too wrapped up in it. My life doesn't depend on it. Let's put it that way. But I just love real music, and I love getting out in front of people. And that's where you break down those virtual barriers. That's where it becomes very real. And that's why I tour.
It's on the other side. So basically, even with young artists who, are you saying they shouldn't really depend on social media too much? Because at the end of the day, it's about getting on the road touring and really working hard at the end of the day. Would you agree?
Yes, I do agree. It's a combination of both. Of course, you need that social media presence. You need to, because of course, with one tweet or one post of some sort, you can reach millions and millions of people, which is something back in my day, you couldn't do. So that's the positive side of it. But the reality is, you have to connect with people on a human, personal level. And that's what this world should really be about. And I haven't forgotten that. And to me, it's very important. So, I would suggest to any young musician, regardless of what they're doing, to get out there and meet their fans and make fans and make friends, because that's really what it's all about.
Speaking of new artists, are there any new artists that you're really into today? Any current artists who you'd like to spread the word on and let our viewers know?
Man, there's tons. I mean, see, I have a really wide playing field when it comes to music. I love everything from roots music. Like I like the stuff that that I love that record that Robert Plant and Alison Krauss did, Raising Sand. People like Sam Bush, who's actually playing on my record, is an incredible talent. The Milk Carton Kids are a young Americana artists who are incredible. And then, I like pop music. I like Bruno Mars. I think Bruno Mars is really amazing. And, needless to say, I don't have to spread the word on Bruno Mars. I think he's doing pretty well for himself.
Right.
But, and the list goes on and on.
Great. And just a reminder, we're speaking with John Oates, who is heading to down with the Good Road Band on Wednesday, September 26th at the Mesa Arts Center. Tickets are available at mesaartscenter.com and at the box office, Mesa Arts Center box office. And John, so really quick, if anything you want to add to your fans, you can say it now, like I said, and we'll wrap this up. And I appreciate your time.
Oh, sure. Well, what I'd like to say to my fans is I really appreciate the hardcore Hall & Oates fans who not only love what Daryl and I do together, but they also accept what Daryl does independently and what I do on my solo work. And I think that's really unique to have a fan base who's so open-minded that they let us do our thing and they still love when we get together and play together. So I've got the best of all worlds, and come on out to Mesa Arts Center and hear this particular Nashville band, because you will not be disappointed, I promise.
And tickets are going very fast, ladies and gentlemen, so you definitely want to pick those out. So before we go, John, why don't you go ahead and we're going to play the video for Arkansas. So we're very excited to add that. Give us the story behind it, and what are your thoughts of the video?
Well, actually, we shot the video in the town that inspired the song. It was called Wilson, Arkansas, a little town about 30 miles northwest of Memphis. And we literally went back there, and I just tried to paint a picture of being in that moment, standing in the moonlight along the banks of the Mississippi River at the edge of a cotton field, standing right in the middle of Highway 61 and saying, man, this is where it's at. And as a songwriter, it inspired me to write it, and it just came out of me as if it came down from heaven. So I hope you like it, and I hope to see you in Mesa.
Yeah, and the scenery in the video is just, the filming is just gorgeous.
It is. It was done by a young cat from Nashville, and we went out to Wilson, Arkansas for the day. We shot the whole thing in one day. It was a pretty great experience.
Sounds good, John. Again, thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure and honor to talk to you, and you're always welcome here on 38IZ Videos.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure talking to you again.
So with that, here is John Oates with the Good Road Band. The song is called Arkansas, from the album Arkansas, exclusively on 38IZ Videos. Enjoy.